Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning, good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And oh my gosh, I am so excited to be talking with my guest today. She is a mutual acquaintance by other acquaintances, and we had them on as guests earlier in the month, Dr. Bill Lampton and John Ray. So it's a small little circle, mutual admiration society. But, it goes to show that it is a small world, and you never know who is going to become a great connection. And that's part of what we're going to be talking about today, is how to show your appreciation for those people. And so please join me in welcoming Elizabeth Cottrell to our program today. Welcome, Elizabeth. How are you doing?
I am just great, Deb. On this cold 19-degree in Shenandoah Valley day, it is just warms my heart to be with you.
Yes, we're going to have so much fun. Well, let me tell people just a little bit about you, and then we will jump into this.
Great.
So Elizabeth Cottrell's career path has been anything but straight. Probably one of the more unusual ones we've ever had. With a graduate degree in human anatomy, she has been a leprosy researcher, a published scientist, wife, mother, grandmother, community leader, freelance writer, desktop publisher, musician, and amateur radio operator. Since 2016, she has also served as the first woman to chair the board of First National Corporation and First Bank in its 118-year history. But more importantly, she is the author of Heartspoken, How to Write Notes That Connect, Comfort, Encourage, and Inspire. And she speaks and writes widely about the lost art of personal notes. Through her Heartspoken Movement, she encourages people to use note writing as a powerful way to strengthen their most meaningful personal and professional relationships with family, friends, clients, employees, and even donors. So again, Elizabeth, welcome.
Thank you so much. I just really love your work, and I'm delighted to have this conversation, because I know that we are kindred spirits.
We are. We're going to have so much fun. And first, I have to be Vanna. Here is the book. Elizabeth was so sweet to provide me with a copy of it. And we will have a link in the show notes. But, like I said, your bio is probably one of the most diverse that we've ever had. Tell us how you got to where you are today.
Oh, gosh. Well, I will try to do the short version, because it really does. So I really did start out, and I'm still consider myself very left-brained in terms of what I studied, biology major and human anatomy, and all of that. Married a physician, and when we came to a little rural town in Shenandoah Valley of Virginia, they did not need an anatomist.
Probably not.
So I sort of took a deep breath and got involved in community work at that point. And then when we realized that, hey, these college expenses for 2 children are looming in a few years, I started doing technical writing. And then later on, we got the kids through school, and then I shifted gears when my husband retired, and started doing writing. I started thinking about, what do I want the rest of my life to look like, and what do I want to have accomplished, and what's important to me. And one of the things that kept coming to the surface was connection. I have been a connector all my life. I love connecting people. I love connecting ideas. That led to my writing. I love connecting people with the things that matter to them. And so when I started my very first blog, back when blogs were pretty young, I realized that the 4 essential connections in my own life were with God, with self, with others, and with nature. And when my life is off kilter for whatever reason, I can almost always look at one of those 4 and realize that it needs some work. Well, the connection with others was sort of just more networking, more helping others, more being grateful for people in your life. But I did write notes. I've always written notes.
Grant told us.
Absolutely. My mother, my grandmothers were great note writers. And people would say, "Oh, you write such lovely notes," or "I wish I could write notes like that." And at some point, somebody just casually said, "Oh, I wish you'd write a book about that." Well, that just planted a seed, but of course, I was too busy. And I think the time that I really realized that a note was way more than just nice manners was a note that I got from a stranger, a woman whose son had just taken his own life. And I didn't know her. I didn't know her son, but I knew his fiance. And I had written to her. And that young woman shared my note with the mother. And she wrote me. And she said that saved me at a time. It was the worst time in my life. And I thought, what on earth did I write?
Right.
I didn't know, but I knew it had come from my heart. And that was a light bulb moment for me that the impact, not only to the person you've written to, but it had a ripple effect. And I have another ripple effect story we can share later on. But, and so that also planted a seed, but still I was too busy. April 2020, the world had just shut down from COVID. My 70th birthday, my daughter called me and she said, "Mom, I know your calendar has gone from completely full to completely empty, just like everybody else's. And I want you to write that book." And I thought, isn't that sweet? She didn't stop there. She said, "And for your birthday, I'm giving you time with a friend of mine who is an accountability coach." And my first thing was, what the heck is an accountability coach? That young woman called me every week to see what I had done and to commit to her what I was going to do before she called the next week. And I did get the book written during
you didn't want to waste your daughter's gift.
It was such a precious gift. And that's how it got written. And then it took me another year to figure out how to get it published. But that's the story of how I got there. But what I really want people to know, people associate me and the book and the Heartspoken Movement with handwritten notes, which I totally believe in.
I'm going to open up for those who are watching that
there you go.
wrote. It's a lovely note. Yes.
But the real message, Deb, is the power of connection.
Right.
We are hardwired for connection, we humans. And it's such an easy, affordable connection tool that I just want people to remember and to be reminded that they too can write a Heartspoken note.
Right. And in this day and age of emails and texts and, a quick post on social or whatever it is, to get a handwritten note is so special. I have a bulletin board that is one of my doors, and it has the handwritten notes that people have sent me, and there's not a lot of them. And you're right. Especially, I'm a smidge younger, but our generation was taught you wrote notes. I remember sometimes Christmas afternoon, but definitely the day after Christmas, the cousins were all at the kitchen table writing our notes, right? And all of those things. And it really was just something that was done, and then we got into, well, I'm busy. Well, I can send email. Oh, I forgot. Now it's been so long, I'm embarrassed. And we just stopped doing it.
Or I'm afraid I'll say the wrong thing. I don't know what to say.
Right.
But Deb, one thing that was such a surprise to me when this book came out, I certainly thought it would resonate with people like you that like to write notes or wanted to write more notes. The group that I was not expecting was business professionals,
right,
who understood that it's so rare in the business world. And John Ray and Bill Lampton know this so well. And this is how we got connected, that when you take the time to send personal notes, particularly if they're unexpected, not just for birthday,
right,
not just for Christmas, it keeps you top of mind. It stands out
on the bulletin board.
It goes on the bulletin board. And it just makes all the difference. The other wonderful story, a connection story that I wanted to share is my husband is a retired physician, but when he was still practicing, he had a very close relationship with the local pharmacist because, of course, he sent a lot of patients there for their medicines. And that pharmacist was about 20 years older than my husband, and he retired. And when he retired, my husband wrote him a congratulations letter thanking him for all of the times that he knew that his patients had gone. And my husband would sometimes call and say, Milson, this patient really cannot afford the full price of this medicine, and I have not charged them, and anything you can do would be greatly appreciated. And he knew that pharmacist, more often than not, either made it free or cut the cost. The other thing that he acknowledged in his letter of congratulations, he said, I also know how often you delivered medicines at night and weekends when nobody else would have done it. And then he said, and Milson, I will never forget the time that I made a mistake on a prescription and you called me and you said, Doc, just checking. And he said, you saved me from possibly harming a patient. And I'm so grateful. Well, fortunately, that pharmacist lived many, many more good years before he passed. And we went to the funeral home for the family night. And the minute we walked in the door, the oldest daughter of that man saw my husband, ran to him, gave him a hug, and said, Dr. Cottrell, we found the letter that you wrote to my dad when he retired, and it was in his Bible.
Oh, so
it was in his Bible.
Treasure.
And then she said, and we have passed it around to all, and she was one of 5, and there were like 15 grandchildren. She said, now we all know a piece of our dad that we wouldn't have known except for your letter.
I love
So that is ripple effect on steroids.
Yeah. And you mentioned in your book the people who kept the letters, in their wallets, things like that, where when they're feeling a little down, they need a boost, whatever it is, they pull that out. And, a lot of times they are from family members. I mean, you talk about your grandfather's notes, and things like that. But yeah, sometimes it's, it's just the fact that there's somebody out there thinking about you. Doesn't even really matter what they wrote. It was that they were thinking about you that matters.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, I think that's an important place to jump a little bit with our business listeners, because you can't write a meaningful note, if you don't know anything about the person.
Right.
And so starting out by caring, there's a car dealership who has a motto here, and they say, service after the sale is second to none. Well, I would turn that around and say service before the sale is what's important.
Right.
Because when you meet somebody, a prospective client, an associate, whatever, pay attention, care enough to listen, and hopefully have some sort of a contact management system, or even if it's a spreadsheet, or even if it's a filing cabinet, even if it's a notebook, but so that when you pick up your pen and paper, you can say, I hope your trip to Europe was wonderful. I know you're proud of your son that just graduated from college.
Right.
I know, I just read a book that I think you'll be interested in. I saw a movie. Those things help you stay top of mind, but they have to start with your paying attention and remembering things about those people.
Right. And we all know that we work with people we know, like, and trust. And some of it is just those simple things. Maybe you're in their office and they've got a picture of, child playing soccer. So you say, oh, that's my daughter.
Great example.
And then of course there's this wonderful thing called social media. So, you can go to their LinkedIn profile and what school they went to. And so, you might you might be writing notes right now that say, hey, congratulations. I know that Indiana won, things like that.
That is a fabulous example. Great idea.
And, even if you're not friends, I'm putting that in my little quotes, with them on Facebook or connected on, some of the other socials, a lot of times you can still tell quite a bit just by what they publicly post. Now, don't stalk them, folks.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, be careful about that. But
Right.
but I think but you most people, I think, have a good instinct about that.
Right. Yeah, if it would feel creepy if somebody said it to you, then it's going to feel creepy if you said it to somebody else. But I've been known to tell people, "Hey, I saw on your LinkedIn profile that you went to wherever." I had a meeting with somebody one time, and I'm a big University of Colorado person. So, go Buffs, yay, right? And was meeting with somebody who was from a graduate of Oklahoma State, big rival. And so, I said, "Hey, I saw on your LinkedIn profile that," and we were meeting in person, that you went to Oklahoma State. And then we proceeded to bash Oklahoma for a while, right? And so, yeah, you can find those things. Or I tell people, maybe somewhere you see that they are, I'm in Atlanta, a fan of the Braves. Okay, then when you meet with them or talk to them, you talk about the Braves. But again, make sure it's something that was public.
Well, and the two other things that come to mind that are great public places to get. So one is your local paper.
Yes. Mhm.
Pay attention when you're looking at, because if people have won awards, if their company hit a milestone, particularly if it's a business publication or if it has a business page, that's a great place. And don't be afraid to write to somebody that you don't know, that's not in your industry.
That's
Because
what
then the next chamber event that you go to, you might meet them, and believe me, they will remember.
Oh yeah. I've done that for years when I wanted to connect with people on LinkedIn. The business journals frequently will do
That's another one.
top whatevers in, top 20 women business owners or whatever.
Exactly.
And when I was really building my LinkedIn connections, I would go through those lists. And that was, of course, when you still got that printed paper. And you could, you write on it, check stuff off. And I would see if they were on LinkedIn. And they usually were, because they were a business person. And the first thing I would say is congratulations on, winning whatever, because everybody likes their ego stroked.
Sure.
And then I said, I would love to connect with you. Never did I have somebody not connect.
Yeah.
But it gave that initial little touch point. And I think that's so important now, especially in the day of AI, where we're getting these "dear user," no, I'm not user, or "your name here." I love those. Um, we need those little touch points again to show, hello, I'm a real person.
Exactly. And people, you already made a mention of this, and I think it's worth repeating. You mentioned noticing a picture on their desk of their children. People are so proud of their children.
Right.
And so I actually pay attention when the children get awards or sports recognitions or academic recognitions. I know how much it means to me when somebody says, "Oh, I know you're proud of your son. I know you're proud of your daughter." So we never get they never get too old to enjoy hearing good things about them.
And we can even look at their Zoom backgrounds. A lot of times, people have pictures in the background, whatever it is. And again, ask, because you can't just say, "Hey, you've got to be specific. I saw that your daughter's team won the big soccer match because you saw the picture, things like that." But yeah, it just kind of adds that extra layer. And
Okay, well, you have to tell me about your stuffed animals then.
all right. So I have two. Let me turn around and grab them. So the first one, for those who are just listening, this is Warrior, and it's a little stuffed bear. And it is part of our Trying Not to Die.live initiative. And the reason that we have this bear and people can actually request them is then you're not alone.
Yeah.
I had family members who gave me stuffed animals, little ones, when I was in the hospital, and those little animals went with me all over everywhere. But I was never alone. There was a part of them that was with me. And then this is, of course, Track. And anybody who knows anything about me knows that Track has his own adventures. He, when we go on travels, he has the hashtag Tracks Travels. And, and if I go and don't take him, people, people are like, "Where's Track? What'd you do with Track?" And he is a beagle because we have beagles. But yeah, it's just little things like that. And it really is funny because on Facebook, people will say things all the time about Track. And I'm often going, "I'm not sure who you are." I don't say that to them. I'm just like, "Oh, well, cool. They paid attention." But yeah, it's those little things. And I think it's funny because during COVID, we craved the connections because we were so isolated, and we came out of it and went right back to where we were before.
It didn't take long. It
Yeah,
didn't take long.
yeah. And I think people really, you mentioned, Brene Brown, all sorts of people. We are hardwired to need connections. Like I said, I'm an only child, and so, I am used to, my own company, but we need to be with people. And even if it's just getting notes from them, things like that.
Let's talk just a minute about Dr. Brene Brown, because her work, I would say, really fueled my conviction that what I was doing was more than just a nice thing to do. What her work has shown, and she has studied millions of people, and she has found that the people who are the happiest, the most resilient, I'm not sure she ever used the word successful because that's such a subjective term.
Right.
But whatever, that's a different measuring stick.
Mhm.
But what she found was that those people who self-reported as being, can bounce back from hardship, all that, were those who had personal and professional networks, people support who did have people in their life and had those essential connections that made the difference. And so this is not just pie in the sky woo-woo stuff. This is very definitely science-based, and she, perhaps, I'm sure others, but she's sort of put a face on it more than anybody else.
Right. Yeah, and one of the things you mentioned was grief, your first example. And I think that's one of the times, whether it's personal, professional, that it is the hardest to say something to someone. Yeah, we know when our business connections maybe are going through something. And it was very interesting when I was first diagnosed with cancer. I got very, very ill, teetering on the edge, right? And I got cards and cards and cards and gifts. I treasure every one of them, right? I still have all the cards. I mean, and this is over 10 years ago. And they were from people who I was dumbfounded even knew that I existed. But then when I would talk to people later who had said and done nothing, and of course it broke my heart. Like, "Oh, I didn't hear from so-and-so, didn't hear from so-and-so. They don't love me." What they told me to a person was, "We didn't know what to say." And my response was usually, "Hallmark has cards." And because, right, like I said, I still have all of those cards from people. But the easiest thing to say to somebody is, "I'm sorry."
That is so interesting so interesting you say that, because I know one woman who would disagree with you. I happen to agree. I happen to agree with you. But what she said, this is when her husband died. She said, "Why do they keep saying they're sorry? It wasn't their fault."
Okay.
And I actually pushed back and I said, "They're not sorry in that sense. It's become a sort of a ubiquitous way to say, I'm just hate that you're having to go through this."
Right.
I often start a note like that by saying, "Words rarely fail me, but there are no words."
Right.
But
Mm-hmm.
I had to reach out and let you know I was thinking about you.
Yeah.
And that's, and everybody will understand that. And what you just said is so important. Those situations when a get well card's one thing. What if you don't think they're going to get well?
Right.
Or you're afraid they won't get well, or that they're afraid they won't get well.
Right. Yeah.
All those are really sticky, wicky situations,
Right.
but not reaching out is just not acceptable. You need to reach out and in whatever way. If that it might be sending a little
A stuffed animal.
a stuffed animal, exactly. And the other piece of that is don't just say, even if you do reach out, what can I do? You may if you know them well enough, but better would be, I'd like to bring a casserole over next Sunday, or I'd like to be on your list to take you to your treatments, or, it's very specific, or I'm going to the grocery store Wednesday. What can I pick up for you?
Right.
That kind of thing. Obviously, if you don't live in the same town, you can't do that kind of thing. But anytime you can be specific rather than just what can I do, it's better.
Yeah. And it is so important to acknowledge the bad things. It's great to say, hey, saw that your child graduated from high school and was the valedictorian, whatever. I've interviewed several guests who, have gone through big tragedies. Most of the, and I, I am not a parent, but to me, the worst would be the death of a child. And I interviewed a gentleman one time, and I started by saying, I am so sorry about your daughter. And he kind of got this look on his face, and we had done our little pre-chat, right? Like I do. And he said, thank you for saying that. Most people won't say anything because they don't want to upset me. And it's like she didn't exist.
Oh, I've heard another mother say that. Her son's been gone, or he died as an adult, and he's been gone 20 years, and said the best thing you can do for me is to mention him and talk about him.
Well, and especially on those big days.
Yeah.
I know that today would have been his 25th birthday.
Yeah.
Just wanted you to know I was thinking about you.
Yeah.
And things like that. And again, we're not talking you're writing a book. It's just,
A line or two.
Yeah.
A line or two is all you need. Yeah.
And because they did exist, and we want them, and maybe it's somebody who died when they were 95. Okay, that's great too. But yeah, it's, we acknowledge that, because it really was one of those things where when I didn't hear from people, I was hurt. I was very hurt. And by some of them, very hurt. And when I would ask them later, they did say, well, we just didn't know what to say. And I am going to pitch your book a little bit here because you've got some suggestions of things that you can say. And those are great. Some are, spiritual quotes, all sorts of other things, but there are definitely things that, excuse me, show that you're caring and that you're thinking about them.
I really tried. I just did not want this book to come across as being a finger wagging book. You should do this. I really
I'm
did.
not saying write your notes.
What I really wanted people to realize is that they have the ability that to give them the confidence to just not do nothing. And so I have all kinds of, there's a resource page in the back for people that buy the book, but I even have a little you can download it and print it, and it's just a little square quote that can be tucked into a sympathy note, and then all kinds of quotes. But I want to make sure, because you mentioned it, a lot of people, when you write to them, whether they have a faith tradition or not. But if you're not sure, it's probably best to stay away from religious language, just because sometimes it's like salt in a wound if they,
well, it could be a different religion.
A different religion. Exactly. Exactly.
Right.
But since this is a business power hour, I also want to just remind people, if you are an employer, if you've got employees that have had losses, please acknowledge them.
Yes.
And know, you will know how far to go. Employers these days have to be so careful, but you will know whether you need to offer them some time off or whatever, but mostly just acknowledge. One of the things that I've done in my 10 years as board chair of a bank, I've got the executive secretary to let me know when she hears of a loss. And sometimes it's a grandmother, certainly spouse, but I write every single one of them. And I know our CEO does too. And I just think that's really important.
Mhm. Right. So now I'm going to be devil's advocate here with some of the things
Good.
because I don't have time. I just don't have time to do this.
We all have the same amount of time.
Priority.
Doug Conant was CEO of Campbell Soup Company for many years, and he wrote thousands of notes to his employees. It's simply whether or not you decide to make it a priority. And once you have made that decision, then there are things you can do to ensure that you do it. So you have to make it convenient. If you don't have, as a business person, if you don't have note cards, professional note cards printed up with your name and your company logo on them with a address on the envelope already, you've missed a bet because boy, when you've got that right there, just grab it, put a note, put it in the mail.
Make it easy and have it where you can see it, right?
Have it where you can see it. Even, and people may be shocked to hear me say this, it does not have to be handwritten. You can dictate that, but be sure to sign it, hopefully add a little line, put it in the mail. That just makes all the difference. And you tuck in your business card if it's appropriate. I wouldn't do that with a sympathy note, but those just make it easy for yourself and make time and start where you are. If you do not write any notes right now, don't tell yourself you're going to start writing 5 notes a week.
Right.
Because you're probably not going to do it. But set some sort of a goal that makes you move the needle. I'm a big fan of Gretchen Rubin, and she wrote a wonderful book called Better Than Before. She studied what makes people create good habits and break bad habits. And what she found was that there were a million ways to do it. But if your goal was just to be a little better tomorrow than you were today, a little better next week than you were last week, just a little, that was the most consistent thing that she saw with people that were successful in breaking bad habits or creating good habits.
Right. And it's funny that you mentioned that, you can now email. No, I mean, if it's better than nothing, right?
And they can be Heartspoken, but you're right. It's not the same. It's not permanent.
Right. But, there are lots of services that can write these, all sorts of things. But I remember years ago when Andy Rooney was on 60 Minutes, right? And he was the curmudgeon, right? He was always at the end and he was complaining about something. And it was the holiday season. And he said, that his Christmas cards were, pre-signed, right? And because who knows how many he sent out, but he sent out a lot, right? And so it said, Andy and whatever his wife's name was, Rooney, right? And he said he had a nephew who complained. And he said, I told him, you didn't seem to mind the hand signature on the check that was included.
Oh my gosh.
And I thought, oh dear. And of course he gave the nephew's name on national television.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, I mean, it comes back to make the effort. And it, whatever it is, like I said, I've got a whole box of cards that were sent over 10 years ago from people who were just sending cards. And, they'd come here to the house and my husband would gather them and bring them to the hospital and read them. And, and I didn't keep them there because I didn't want them to be damaged. But yeah, I mean, I kept those. I kept the cards that people sent after my mother passed. There are just things like that. At some point, somebody's going to go, "Oh my Lord," when they have to go through all of this stuff. But yeah, it really is. Just you got to make the effort.
Well, another little trick that I have found, and I wrote about this at the beginning of the year in my newsletter. If you doesn't take very long, but to start a list of people that come to mind immediately. So you might know people, you may have 2 or 3 people in your life that are very sick. You might have 2 or 3 people in your life that are in their 80s or 90s. You might have 2 or 3 people in your life that are clients that have been your best clients. You might have 2 or 3 people that you would really like to be your clients. So maybe you've got, 12, 15 people on this list. Then the next time you've got a minute, take a look at that list, jot a note to one of them, you know, that can help you instead of like, well, I know a million people want, how do I decide who to write a note to? Don't do it that way. And then get in the habit when people come to mind, when you're reading a book and you think, oh, the last time I had coffee with Joe, we talked about this and he'd be interested in this. Or when you know that one of your prospects is going to do something. Anyway, there's just, when people come to mind, just have that list somewhere. You can just jot them down. You may never write to them, but at least you've got sort of a framework.
Right. And you really don't know, like we were saying, when just something simple is going to make a huge difference. Just yesterday, I received a note, a card from my friend. Now, we've known each other since we were 6. And so, as I was saying, that's a really long time ago. I went back to Colorado in January. She was retiring after 40 years with the federal government. And they threw a surprise party. So I went back. They contacted me and said, hey, think you'd, and I thought, well, I have to. Just the fact that they contacted me, it was like, well, I have to, right?
Sure.
And then we were able to spend some more time together and all sorts of things. And she wrote this most special note. It will go in the true place of honor, just thanking me for doing that and then being able to spend time together. Now, since we were 6, I don't ever remember getting a note from her for anything. And so I don't know what, maybe it's okay. She's retired. She got all this free time, right? But, and she is one of those people who, we can go several weeks without communicating, maybe even long, and then we pick it right back up, right? We're just those type of friends. But she was one when I was first diagnosed that I didn't hear from. And I was crushed, and then I mean, it was like hours, not a long time, right? And she finally said, I'm having trouble with this. Give me a little bit of time.
Wow. Yeah.
I was okay. And not only then did she become one of my biggest supporters, she actually came out here twice from over to Atlanta to help, when I needed it. And, and so we've always been there for each other, but there was something about this note that just, it was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And of course she closes with all my love.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, just the fact that she took the time to do that. Now, she, I don't know, she may have written notes to every single person who attended. That's fine, right? It wasn't a huge party, but yeah, I mean, just the fact that she did that and she put personal stuff in there. We've all, I love the high school graduation thank you cards, right? Thank you for and you can tell it was, yes, fill in the blank. And, and they really like it because I usually just send checks, that's the easiest thing. And, I will use it for school name, and it's like, but you know what? They made the effort.
They did. Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, Deb, one of the other, and you may have this on your list to talk about, but one of the other things that people tell me about why they don't write notes is that they have arthritis or their hand gets cramped or whatever.
Just write really bad. I have penmanship.
That too, and that is and so I've written about that before several times, and actually I've just ordered. My mother is almost 101, and she said she would be my guinea pig. I ordered some of these adaptive pens that have the thick. I ordered 3 totally different styles, and she's going to test them for me and tell me, and I'm going to write about that. But they're also, some people can type even though they can't write, and so that's a good example of typing, printing, stick it in the mail. The other thing is dictating, dictating things, and then there are services that will send out personal things for you, which is not my first choice, but it's certainly particularly, and I do get that for companies, sometimes they need to, when they're sending hundreds of something, they need to do, but we're talking about a whole different type of thing here, but there are alternatives. And of course, pick up the phone. We're talking about connection here.
Yes.
It's not, every situation is not going to be solved by a handwritten note. So telephone, video call, all those things are heart-spoken efforts.
Yes. And I want to address the fact that your book is heart-spoken because that's, its title, but it is because we are speaking from the heart.
Right.
And, and it's perfectly fine to do that in a business setting. I mean, you're not gushing, you're not proclaiming your love. You're just being grateful. You're being helpful, all of those various things. And that does come from the heart.
You're being yourself, and yes, and you're being intentional. But I love your word thoughtful. That's probably the most important thing.
Right. Now, one of the things, and this is comes from your book, and so we want people to get the books, but we're going to talk about it, to entice people. You have your secret notes formula. So notes is an acronym. So let's go into more detail on that.
Sure. And actually, I'm going to grab this because I don't want to get it wrong.
I have it open. I was like,
I think that, and this is not everybody's cup of tea, but some people really do find just having that kind of thing, close at hand.
And I don't know what to write.
Right. And so the N in notes is natural. Pretend like that person is across your desk, across your kitchen table, and talk to them as though you were just talking to them. And I've actually heard people say, when you don't know what to say, dictate it into a notes app, and then transfer that to the page. So natural, N is for natural, O is for open, and particularly for those tricky notes that are emotional or sensitive. Take just a moment, take a breath, open your mind and your heart to the situation, and think about how you want your note to land on the other end. And that's and trust. I don't know, whatever your faith tradition is, but trust that still small voice will help you write the right thing. T is for tell. Tell is to tell somebody what you remember. If it's a sympathy note, tell them a story that you remember about the deceased. Tell them what it was that you loved about them. If it's a thank you note, tell them what you're going to do with your gift. Storytelling has a place in your note writing, and you can think of that as that you're just telling a story. Sometimes it takes the pressure off of writing that note. E is for empathize. And there again, think about how you want that note to land. Put yourself in their shoes, put yourself in their position, and just feel what you want them to feel, and it'll help to guide the words that you choose. S is for share. And this is similar to tell, but to share a story, to share a memory, to share when somebody gives you a note, it also stands for specific, share or specific.
Okay.
Instead of just saying, thank you for the gift, say, thank you for the blue bowl that you gave me.
As opposed to fill in the blank.
It reminds me of one my grandmother had, and I will think of you both every time I use it. Thank you for the scarf. How on earth did you know it would go with so many things? Just to share those thoughts. One note that I wrote one time, a sympathy note, when my great uncle died, and I didn't really know his wife very well, but I wrote a memory I had of when he took me fishing with a cork, a little bamboo pole, and a cork. And that thing, and I caught something and pulled it up, and it was something like a shoe or something very, very unfishy. Well, he laughed so hard, but he took it off and made me throw it back in until I caught a real fish. And she wrote me back later. She said, that was just what made me so happy to know that you have that memory of him. So, so share, and so S for share and specific. So that's the NOTES, natural, open, tell, empathize, and share or specific.
Right. And of course, and I am guilty of this. I don't do notes, but I am going to order some. You are convincing me. And so I'm going to order personalized ones. They're going to be right here where I see them so that they're a reminder, things like that. But, you talk about this in the book. The more you do it,
oh my
the
gosh,
more natural it will become.
Absolutely. The easier it is. And may I just read a little? I literally got this note yesterday.
Okay.
From, get it here, from one of my readers. She said, just a quick text to say thanks for inspiring me to make connection a priority. Today, I've written a thank you note to a business associate, a just because note to a sweet friend in New York, a thinking of you and love you note to my Aunt Katie, whom I've never written to before, even though she's 92 years old. Shame on me. And a letter to a pen friend in Germany. You're the absolute best. That's $90 well invested. And she's referring to my membership program where I encourage people to and give them all kinds of resources. But when I get something like that, it just makes my day, because it's not a numbers game. And and I batch things. I don't write a note every day.
Right.
I might write 5 one day and none for another week, but it's just caring and putting that care into communication.
Right. Now, several times you mentioned thank you notes, right? So what about when you get the gift and you're like, oh, okay. How do you write that thank you note?
Oh, have we all had that situation?
Yes. Did they not know that that was not my color, or why on earth would they think I would want this?
Well, and so a couple of funny things about that. One is to be very serious, even if it's not something you like, even if it was not particularly thoughtful. They did go to the trouble.
Yes.
Get it? They did go to the cost of purchasing it and having it sent to you. And so that in itself is worthy. And so just do your best, take a deep breath, and express appreciation for that. But my story about that is I got a birthday gift from my mother, and it was a wreath, the kind of thing that goes in the center of a table that you might put a candle in the middle of, and it was made out of seashells. Well, it was lovely, but neither of us are beachy people. Could not.
We're like,
I could not imagine. But I, of course, called her and thanked her for it, and she went, "What? No, that's not what I ordered."
oh no.
So if you don't acknowledge that, they might, even if it might have been a mistake and they didn't know it. So people do appreciate, and gosh, if you've ordered something and sent it to somebody, you really appreciate knowing they got it. That's the worst is if they didn't.
And because that's an awkward conversation to have. Elizabeth, did you receive the gift that I sent? Because you're going to make them feel guilty if they didn't say thank you.
Exactly.
All those various things. But yeah, and especially because we do that a lot now, right? We order the gifts, we have them sent, and he was like, did you get it?
And even if you've got tracking, I've heard the young people say, well, the tracking should have told you that I got it. Well, it told you that it arrived on my property, but it could have been left on we've had people, UPS, leave stuff at our barn, for heaven's sake. So anyway.
Right. And you're not asking to make them feel guilty, but yeah, it is awkward when you don't acknowledge it. And and if it's not something you like, want, need, use, whatever, you still can say, thank you so much for thinking of me.
Okay. Yes. And there's a very selfish reason that you should express your thanks. Because believe me, people that are generous are going to want to repeat that generosity if they feel like you have been grateful for it. Grandmothers and people like that, believe me, they know which of their grandchildren thanks them and which ones don't. And they're much more likely to do something again for the person.
That you get the bigger gift. You get left something in the will. And
that's not the reason to do anything, of course. But it's certainly gratitude begets gratitude. I believe that.
And from a business aspect, it is very good because you
Absolutely.
want them to think of you when they need your product or service, when they can refer you, whatever those things are. That's that top of mind. But we were talking about, the thank you cards for high school gifts, right? And I always, now here's the thing. I have to get an actual invitation or announcement or whatever the heck they call it, right? seeing, somebody post on Facebook or no, that doesn't count. I held something, and I mean, it can be an email. I mean, like I've got one right now that I need to respond to. That's a baby shower. I can't go, but I need to, I do need to do that. But, like I said, usually we do checks. And quite often, the only way we know that they got it is the check was cashed. But yeah, again, 5 minutes of, I'll put it toward my books or, whatever. It's not a
Exactly.
big deal. And
Well, you probably heard the story about the grandmother that the way she got her grandchildren to write her back or call her was to send a check and not sign it.
not sign it. That sounds like something my mother would do. And it's funny because my mother was a master note writer. And the older she got, the more detailed they got. I mean, it was, but it was detailed to the point of, okay, this is funny. But then she did develop macular degeneration and she couldn't. But she still, even several months before, she passed away in March. And so, Christmas would have been before. She still got thank you cards. And, and it was signed, and she signed it. I mean, you knew it took a lot for her to sign that card. But she still acknowledged it. She might not have said what it was or anything like that, but it was just ingrained in her to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like we said, once you start doing it, it does become habit.
It absolutely does. It habit and easier.
Mhm.
The words will just begin to flow.
Yep. I love one of the things that you talk about in your book is, we send Christmas cards, we send birthday cards, anniversary. There's all these other holidays. And holidays is kind of one of those funny words because they're not really Hallmark holidays, right? Hallmark doesn't have cards for them. But there's so many other things that give you an excuse to reach out and connect with somebody. And I know about a lot of them because I do social media for senior living communities.
Sure.
And so like the other day was the national day that Snickers was started or something like that.
And there's so many.
Yeah.
So many. I've got.
You can easily find a reason to reach out to somebody and say, hey, it's opening day and I know you're a big baseball fan.
Exactly. This is what I send out every month. This is a February calendar for note and letter writers. And this is a month of letters challenge month, Black History Month, International Friendship Month, and then a bunch of days, of course, Valentine's Day. But this past week was Thank a Mail Carrier Day. They're all kind of fun things.
Right. And in essence, folks, what we're saying is there's no excuse to not be doing this. Now, I will say my excuse is I'm lazy. But so I am going to do things to make it easier. I'm going to order the cards because, okay, I will have spent money on them. Therefore, I should use them. And they'll be personalized. So, and right here so that I can see them and remember, so maybe it is that I read on LinkedIn, somebody got a promotion. Great. Then I can send them a note. But that does bring something to mind is sometimes these people are just our nebulous connections. And, and like we said, email might be the only way you can reach out to them or, a note through the platforms. But you give some suggestions in your book, and I love this, on ways to not to legally and nicely find somebody's address. So tell us a little bit more about some of those suggestions.
Well, the one that immediately comes to mind is whitepages.com. And I subscribe to that, and it costs, I don't think it costs but about $10 a year. And you can, it's actually a little disconcerting how easy it is to find
I know, a little spooky.
An address on that. But what I have done in a couple of instances where people were pretty well known and would understandably not have their address out, I've actually reached out to their agent, their publisher, that kind of thing. And without exception, they said, I would be happy to get them pass this on.
Right.
In that regard. And of course, sometimes, particularly if they're associated with a company, then you can find the company website and get an address that way. But yeah, don't do anything creepy. And often if I'm reaching out like to a publisher or whatever, I will just be very clear. I've been an admirer of this person, and I wanted to express my appreciation for how much their book, their writing, their play, their movie meant to me. And could you suggest, and I understand that privacy is important, but could you suggest the best way to reach them? And that's the way I've done it.
Right. And in many cases, they are going to have a social presence, and so you can track it down that way. And depending on who they are, you can just ask.
Yeah,
I mean,
you can.
You asked me for my address.
I did.
Now, you were sending me a book, and so there was a very valid reason for that. But, and I get maybe once a month, and especially after an interview,
Sure.
somebody will say, we'd like to send you, something of appreciation. And, and can we have your address? And I always give them the address. But because, like you said, it's pretty easy to track down anymore. But I always tell them, thank you, but it's not necessary. I do know that it was appreciated. So sometimes they send something, sometimes they don't, and I get a variety of things, But but what means the most really is when I get that handwritten note, as opposed to just a thing that they sent to everybody.
Absolutely, it just matters. It just matters.
Right.
And I will say though, if you're listening to this and you have a visceral reaction like, no way, no how, this is not me, well, forget it. I mean, life's too short. This is not.
And if you wrote it, it would come across as, my grandmother's making me write this note, right?
But your message and my message is, don't forget, this is a powerful tool out there, and you are missing an opportunity not to give it a try.
Right. And it comes back to what we were saying at the very start. We don't get very many of these.
They stand out.
Yep, they do. They really, truly stand out. Well, oh my gosh, Elizabeth, we are almost at the top of the hour.
I can't believe it.
I know. And so tell us a little bit more. I know that you do, one of the things is people get your book and they use it for book club. So tell us a little bit more about the services and things that you provide.
Thank you so much. I think the best way just is my website is heartspoken.com.
Okay.
And that way, and I have a contact form there, which I'm just delighted to reach out to if you reach out that way. And it has other contact information, including snail mail. But book clubs, I do have I put together a sort of a guide for book clubs that want to look at it. And I am happy to send that out, even if you haven't decided, if you're thinking about choosing it for a book club, because it gives you a lot of info about what it's about, what its goal is, and some questions that are good reader questions to kind of stimulate discussion. I'm also delighted to join your book club if I'm close enough physically or by Zoom. I've done that many times, and I would be thrilled and honored to do that. And it
that'd be great.
Does not cost anything. I do not charge for that. I have a weekly newsletter on Substack called the Heartspoken Note, and it is free, and it is just encouraging all kinds of people to write notes, but it's also everything what I call epistolary, stamps and paper and pens and ink, and we talk about a lot of things related. And then and once you go there, you'll see some membership. I have a paid membership programs that are one's geared more for business applications, and one's more geared for personal. So that's a work in progress, and but heartspoken.com is where to find it all.
Cool. And we will have, all the links in the show notes. We'll also link to your LinkedIn profile because you're very active there.
Great. So, and if you connect with me on LinkedIn and we're not connected, just add a little note about that you heard me on this podcast, because I don't accept every single LinkedIn request if I don't have a clue.
Especially when they're like random from some other country. And yeah, right. I love it. Well, oh my gosh, Elizabeth, gonna have to tell Dr. Bill that he did a good
Yep.
job when he introduced us. And yeah, I mean that's the thing is you never know where these connections are going to go.
You don't.
And so just keep that in mind. As a business person, you never know.
Well, and people might be interested. The way I found out about John Ray is that he had written a thank you note to a podcast host. She's apparently had never gotten a thank you note before because she held it up and took a picture and posted it on LinkedIn. And I had simply done a search for handwritten notes and that popped up. So I reached out to her. I reached out to him. He invited me to his podcast. He introduced me to Dr. Bill. Dr. Bill introduced me to you. It just is an interesting world and you never know.
Right. It is. It is. Well, I can't wait to have you on again because I think it is so important to just keep reminding folks. And so maybe we'll do it, after I've had a chance to get into the habit of doing this so I can report back, right? You'll be my accountability partner. But until then, do you have any final thoughts that you want to leave everyone with?
Oh gosh, Deb, thank you. I would just say, and I put this at the bottom of every newsletter, whether written or spoken, words from the heart will never fail you.
I love that. I love that. Well, I am Deb Creer. I have been having one of the best times talking with Elizabeth Cottrell. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.